Good evening and welcome to the week ending April 18th, 1942. My name is Henry Chap, your host. And for the next 2 hours, we are going to go back in time. We are going to listen to NBC News, Command Performance, the Sports Page of the Air, the Cavalcade of America, and Information Please. It begins in just a little bit. If you love learning about World War II from the point of view of those who lived through the war years, you might want to check out our Patreon page, World War II on the Air and in Print, Old Time Radio, and News. There you will get a complete daily and near-complete Sunday newspaper as we go through the war day by day. You will not only get the newspaper, but you will get radio programs from that same corresponding date. The radio shows can be listened to or downloaded singly or in a larger file representing that day. You will not only get the newspaper and old-time radio, we do the top 10 song countdown every Saturday, share documentaries about where we are at in the war, movies that were in the theaters at the time we are reliving, and last but certainly not least, veterans interviews. Once in a while, we will also share radio and newspapers that are not from the war years. The page is set up in 2 tiers with 1 week free trials. The $2 tier gets you just the daily radio programs. The $5 tier gets you everything. I'd suggest a free trial for the $5 tier so you can get an idea of what we have to offer, and then before the week is finished, decide which tier you prefer or canceling at no cost. Once again, that's World War II on the Air and in Print, Old Time Radio, and News on Patreon. The link is in both the description to this video and in the comments section below. Hope to see you there for the duration. One of the more interesting things about reading the newspaper over on Patreon as far as learning about World War II and learning what it was like to live in World War II are the casualty lists that come out. It's actually a sad thing, and it really gives you the human cost of the war. And a lot of times they'll give the addresses of the men who were lost. They'll interview the wife. They'll talk a little bit about the family. It's just, they'll give the age too, and a lot of times it's men in their 20s, an age when I was partying and having a good time, and it's really just a sobering thing to read. Our first block of shows, we are going to feature NBC News, a morning newscast from Monday, April 12th, 1942, or is it's Sunday, I'm sorry, Sunday, April 12th, 1942. I'm getting my days mixed up. And then following that, we are going to have the Special Services Division Command Performance. It was not known as the Armed Forces Radio Service yet, and you would not be able to listen to this program unless you had a shortwave radio. It was not broadcast to the general public in the United States. It was meant for military audiences only. This particular program is the first one done from Hollywood. The previous 3 or 4 programs were done from New York. Command Performance decided to go to Hollywood to take advantage of the bigger talent pool. And this episode, boy, when I read the stars of each of these individual episodes, really everybody came out to do this program, and they did it for free. All of these stars are giving their time for no money. And I think it was CBS, it might have been both networks or all the networks, gave their studio time to this program or to the Armed Forces Radio Service to do programs like this. So the facilities were donated, and the equipment was donated, and the talent was donated for this. Boy, the country was really starting to come together now. This particular episode stars Gene Tierney, Betty Hutton, Gary Cooper, Arthur Q. Bryan, who was one of the writers on Fibber McGee and Molly. On this program, he plays Raymond Radcliffe, the Andrews Sisters, Ray Noble's Orchestra, Edgar Bergen and Charlie McCarthy, Ginny Sims, and Bob Burns, among others. That is a really great show. You're going to enjoy that. Then following Command Performance, we are going to move back to the United States with Sports Page of the Air, a locally produced program from KYA in San Francisco. This is from April 15th, 1942. And if you're a baseball fan, you'll really enjoy this program. The host is Ernie Smith, and they mention a lot of famous baseball players on here, and they give the scores and whatnot. It was just a daily sports program. And the only reason this thing was recorded, my guess is Ernie Smith was moving on to bigger and better things. So I guess he wanted a souvenir for himself of the old sports page of the air. But it's a really interesting program, and it gives you a little bit of variety of what was going on in radio at this time and what was going on in the country at this time. This is some really good stuff, this first segment. So without any further talking from me, let's turn on this old tube radio. That's our time machine, and give this stuff a listen.
Good morning, everyone. It's Sunday, April 12th, and here's the news from overseas as reported by our staff correspondents in foreign fields. We take you first direct to London.
This is London. John McVane speaking. London heard from Libya today that the enemy have withdrawn a column operating on the southern flank. British artillery shelled enemy guns and infantry posts on the coast road west of Gazawa. London papers today give much of their limited space to accounts of the breakdown of the Indian negotiations. Most papers also headline an Air Ministry statement that in 4 raids on Western Germany this last week, 1,000 tons of bombs were dropped. It said that this works out to more than a ton a minute during the time the raids were in progress. Britain today is in a period of waiting. Work is going ahead at full blast, but the British are waiting for news of a German drive, news of an attack on India, news that General Marshall's talks here coincide with allied offensive action in some theater of war. The British expect even harder taxation when Parliament meets and the budget is introduced. But observers don't believe that Mr. Churchill and other government leaders will be able to give any very complete picture of the war situation or answer questions about Singapore and the naval losses in the Indian Ocean. After Sir Stafford Cripp's radio speech yesterday, I went down to the India office in Whitehall. You got an impression of musty corridors stacked with files that tell the day-to-day histories of the races and the nations of India for a century and a half. Covering one entire wall of the conference room was a painting of Clive of India meeting the great Mughal in 1765. The picture was dated 1820. A few of us talked with an anonymous official. There was disappointment in the India office at the breakdown of negotiations, at the fact that the Congress leaders preferred no bread at all to 7/8 of a loaf. But it was felt that the position now is better than before Sir Stafford flew to India. The British think they've shown their good faith to the world and to the Indian peoples. As far as India's defense is concerned, recruits are pouring in faster than they can be equipped. 85% come from the northwestern area, and only 15% from the unwarlike southeastern part, where Congress influence predominates. If the British had given in and put Congress entirely in charge of India, it was emphasized that the Muslims might have revolted, and the Muslims supply 37% of the Indian army. It was emphasized, too, that Indian peasant guerrillas without arms couldn't stop the Japanese, but the Indian army does hope to do the trick. Talking of armies, there's a growing demand here for a change in the whole control of the 3 British services that may have a far-reaching effect on the future of the war. The authoritative London Times and Sir Edward Grigg, former Under-Secretary for War, yesterday put it in black and white. They called for a combined general staff to weld the Army, Navy, and Air Force into one powerful unit. The professional experts and even war correspondents have felt that while the 3 services were individually strong, the links between them showed obvious weakness. What responsible critics want is to have the 3 forces as closely knit into one weapon as are the small groups that carry out the commando raids. The loss of a British aircraft carrier and 2 heavy cruisers in the Indian Ocean should make the pressure for this move even stronger. This is John McVane in London, returning you to New York.
Thank you, and back in New York now, here's news from Moscow. The spotlight of the war in Russia is turned back on the Kalinin front today, on the thawing bogs and forests and windswept plains northwest of Moscow. The Soviet Information Bureau this morning tells of a furious battle outside a populated village there. A Red Army unit finally put 4 big German guns out of commission and 7 mortars. And the Nazis lost 320 men in killed and wounded. On a nearby sector, the Germans tried a desperate attack, but the Russians broke into their fortified zone on the enemy's heels and drove out the Germans out of 2 more populated places. Moscow also tells of daring Red Army patrols that are operating behind German lines in constant danger of torture and death if they are captured. One of these groups has annihilated 250 Nazi men and officers on the Central Front. And in other local actions, 320 more invaders have been put forever out of this war. Earlier, London heard that Red Army flyers had destroyed 300 German planes in 3 days of fighting. Dispatches from Stockholm told of a German tank division being roundly beaten in the Crimea on the southern end of the long front. And in the Soviet capital, President Kalinin has announced that more than 2 million Germans are estimated to have been immobilized during the winter by frostbite alone. Istanbul, Turkey. Germany has begun to husband its dwindling gasoline reserves with greater caution than ever, and this is indicated by a skilled observer in Istanbul. He has just returned from Bulgaria, and he says the training program for Bulgarian pilots has been halted by a shortage of gasoline. This observer also remarks that Germans have built 50 to 60 new military airports in Bulgaria, some of them only a few minutes flying time from Turkey. And now reports on developments in the Pacific Theater, reports which comes to us through the newsroom in San Francisco.
For a report direct from Australia, we call in now our correspondent in Sydney.
This is Sidney Albright, calling from Sydney. The time is 11:06 on Sunday evening. This is the first story out of Australia giving details of the newly created Special Service Organization of the United States Army. This organization, under the leadership of Colonel A.L.P. Johnson and Major Lynn F. Cowan, will direct its activities towards the welfare and entertainment of American troops stationed in the Anzac area. In conjunction with the Army Chief of Chaplains, the American Red Cross, the Australian Military Forces, and the RAAF, working sections are being formed into departments covering welfare, recreation, athletics, publications, post exchange, and a miscellaneous unit. Since its inception, more than 50 programs have been arranged in various camps for the month of April alone, giving the boys a variety of entertainment, including motion pictures, radio and stage talent, and name bands. The welfare section is responsible for billeting of troops, rest areas, service clubs, hospitality, and transportation. Another department, named Recreation, will take care of band concerts, radio, stage, theatricals, motion pictures, and recreation centers. The athletics section will organize inter-army games and matches in which it is expected the Australian forces will play a very active part. The Kookaburra is the name selected for the Special Service magazine, to be issued free of charge to all officers and men. This magazine will be controlled by the Publications Department. The title Kookaburra was taken from the Australian bird of the same name, a small but very aggressive creature commonly known here as a laughing jackass. In World War I, numerous groups were established in France to handle the vitally important problem of morale. In many cases, their operations overlapped, and in fact were actually in competition with each other. It is the aim of Special Service to concentrate all activities into a well-organized and well-planned unit to obtain the best results with a minimum of red tape and confliction of interest. Every day, articles appear in the Australian papers pressing the government to change the law prohibiting motion pictures and other forms of entertainment on Sunday. At present, almost the only amusement available to the troops on Sunday is a walk in the park or a trip to the zoo. As the winter season is approaching, the beaches are losing popularity. So rather than having a day of enjoyment and relaxation, the American soldiers find themselves at loose ends on Sunday. There has already been considerable enthusiasm in the field of sports. Baseball and football matches have been played against the Aussies, much to the enjoyment of all concerned. The personal welfare of our boys will be left entirely in the hands of the Special Service Organization. It is a big job and one that will require a great deal of energy, as well as able administration. You will hear much more about them in the months to come. The RAAF smashed a Japanese aerodrome and buildings in another heavy attack on Kopang, Timor. The planes flew through an intense anti-aircraft barrage to drop bombs from a height of only 1,500 feet. The Japanese raid on Port Moresby, New Guinea, was made from a height of 20,000 feet. Apparently, the Allied anti-aircraft gun crews are more effective than the Japanese. I now return you to San Francisco.
And across the nation to our newsroom in Washington.
Back in Washington, after a brief trip to his home in Georgia, Chairman Vinson of the House Naval Affairs Committee has drafted legislation to curb war profits and provide for a 48-hour work week without overtime pay. The bill is expected to be introduced in the House tomorrow and will be offered as a substitute for the more drastic Smith-Vinson bill, which was presented some time ago. Introduction of the measure will once more bring into the Capitol spotlight the war labor controversy which was suspended during the Easter holidays. As drafted by Vinson, the new measure has 5 principal provisions. First, it provides for a 48-hour work week with time and a half pay for work beyond that period. Second, it imposes an 8% profit limitation on all war work contracts over $100,000. This 8% is in addition to a so-called cushion profit allowance of $6,000. And the Naval Affairs Chairman says that this item will provide an incentive to small industry to convert to war work. The third provision of the new bill is that the union status of all shops would be frozen. In other words, if a plant is now operating as a closed shop, it would retain that status for the duration of the war. The fourth provision would set a maximum limit of $5 as the initiation fee to any union which is engaged in war work, while the fifth would offer a system of bonuses to the worker. The new bill is far less severe than the earlier Smith-Vinson legislation, which imposed a flat profit ceiling of 6% and suspended the 40-hour week and closed shop. Many members who opposed the first bill as being too drastic are expected to fall in behind the new measure, particularly since so many of them have recently visited their districts and sounded out labor sentiment back home. Also in Washington, the government has requisitioned 25% of the country's commercial airlines for the Army Air Forces. They'll be operated under the direction of the Air Service Command and will be used for carrying cargoes and personnel. According to the Army, this initial 25%, which constitutes about 85 transports, should be enough for present needs. However, should it develop that more planes are required, they too will be requisitioned. The action follows the pledge which the airlines extended to the government at the outbreak of the war, a pledge of wholehearted cooperation in all government requirements. On the diplomatic front, there are 2 important developments. The first concerns Free France's attitude toward a possible Japanese invasion of strategic New Caledonia Island, while the second deals with a South American visitor to the United States. On the New Caledonia question, a Free French spokesman has expressed confidence that the United Nations are prepared to meet any attack on the island, which lies along the vital sea lanes from Hawaii to Australia. The statement was made by de Gaulle's Naval Commissioner, Rear Admiral Philippe Abourneau, who also added that should the Japs attempt to invade the island, they would receive a hot welcome. The other diplomatic development concerns the forthcoming visit to the United States of Peru's president, Manuel Prado. Mr. Prado will come to Washington next month as the guest of the United States. Prado's visit to our capital is definitely an event. Never before has a South American chief executive come to Washington on an official visit during his term of office. However, several Central American government heads have visited the United States in recent years. During his stay in Washington, President Prado will be a guest at the White House. Later, he'll visit several other large cities, including New York, Boston, and Detroit. The Red Cross is still having trouble securing an international delegate in Japanese-occupied Manila. As a result, arrangements to send supplies to Americans held prisoner in the Philippines are being delayed. The Red Cross delegate must be a citizen or subject of a neutral country. He would oversee the distribution of the supplies to the prisoners. Some weeks ago, the Red Cross announced that negotiations for an agreement were underway through Geneva. Officials say that if no one is found in Manila who can or will undertake the task, arrangements may be made for some suitable person to go there. Well, for the moment, that's all the news from Washington.
And that's the news up to this moment. These have been reports by John McVean in London, Sidney Albright in Sydney, Australia. To Developments as received in our New York and Washington newsrooms were reported from those points. And for the latest news, keep tuned to this station.
This is the National Broadcasting Company.
Command Performance USA, the greatest entertainers in America, as requested by you, the fighting men of the United States Armed Forces throughout the world.
Command Performance.
Presented this week and every week till it's over there. Hello there, men. Here's that show of yours again, Command Performance, coming this time from Hollywood, USA. Tonight's the first letter ailmerited itself from the Canal Zone, and it's signed by the Panama Jungleer, and it says...
Just mention us guys at Howard Field, will you? And how's about an earful of our favorite movie star, Miss Jean Tierney?
Your wish is the entertainment industry's command, fella, and here she is, glamorous, gorgeous Jean Tierney.
Thank you, Paul Douglas, and greetings to the finest fighting men in the world. The talent appearing here tonight makes the studio look like the lobby of the Chinese theater, with all the footprints filled. So here we go. First, for a fellow who never expected to wind up in Panama when he saw the Broadway hit Panama Hattie last year, we present the young lady who stole his heart in that show, and who is now one of the season's outstanding successes here in Hollywood, Miss Betty Hutton.
Life was so peaceful at the laundry. Life was so calm and serene. Life was très till that unlucky day I happened to read that magazine. Why did I read that advertisement when it said, since I rumba, Jim thinks I'm sublime? Why, oh, why did I ever try when I didn't have the talent, I didn't have the money, and teacher did not have the time? Boy! Arthur Murray taught me dancing in a hurry. I had a week to spare. He showed me the groundwork, the walk-around work, and told me to take it from there. Arthur Murray then advised me not to worry. It would come out all right. To my way of thinking, it came out stinking. I don't know my left from my right. The people around me can all sing a 1 and a 2 and a 3. But any resemblance to waltzing, it's just coincidental with me, 'cause Arthur Murray taught me dancing in a hurry. And so I take a chance. To me it resembles a 9-day tremble, but he guarantees it's a dance. My tango resembles a 2-step. Marimba makes people turn pale. The conga goes into a goose step till the FBI is a dog on my trail, 'cause Arthur Murray taught me dancing in a hurry. Maybe the stars were wrong. If I ain't a menace to Ruth St. Denis, I'll do it till one comes along. A turkey trot or gavotte, I don't know which, I don't know what. Jitterbug, bunny hug, long as you cut a rug. Walk the dog, do the clock, Lenny hop till you drop. Ball the jack, back to back, cheek to cheek till you're weak. You've heard of Pavlova, well, Jack, move over, here comes the queen of the day.
Thank you, Miss Betty Hutton. Thank you, Miss Betty Hutton. Each week, Command Performance brings to the armed forces the latest sports news, hot from where it happened. Tonight, our sportscaster is the man who was America's unanimous choice to play the part of the late Lou Gehrig, and his life story now being produced here in Hollywood. I give you the Academy Award winner of this year, one of the world's finest fellows any year, Gary Cooper.
Thank you, Gene Tierney. And hello, fellas. The big talk in sports today is the opening of the Major League ball season. Being privileged as I am to play the part of the immortal Lou Gehrig in the new picture, The Pride of the Yankees, you'd expect me to hand the 1942 American League pennant to the New York team. Well, I won't disappoint you. Bill Dickey felt the same way about it when we talked together on the Lou Gehrig picture. Now, Dickey's out to catch 100 games for the 14th consecutive year. Quite a record for a kid like Bill. Of course, as you know, there's a shortage of kids in Major League Ball this year, and more than one old-timer is trying to work the kinks out of his legs for a comeback. For a while, I wouldn't have been surprised to see old Babe Ruth himself back in uniform. Right now, the Babe is taking his licks against a bullpen pitcher named Pneumonia, and from latest reports is more than holding his own. Behind the Yankees in the American League, I'll take the White Sox. That is, if their sound locators pick up a hard-hitting outfielder. Now, they have the best pitching in the league, led by two aging but effective hurlers, Thornton Lee and Ted Lyons. For third, I'll take Boston. Fourth, Detroit. And fifth, the Cleveland Indians. The Indians don't have much of a team left, but the Cleveland fans must chuckle to themselves when they think of a Jap facing a hand grenade tossed by rapid Robert Feller. In the National League, let's pick the St. Louis Cardinals. Command performance is not heard in the USA, so I'm out of reach of any pop bottles that any loyal Dodger fans might heave at me. Besides, we're saving glass these days. After the Cards and the Dodgers, I like the Reds and the Cubs for third and fourth. What's left, you fellows rate for yourselves. And however it goes, just remember this, fellas. As Private Joe Lewis puts it, your team can't lose because it's on God's side. And all of us back here are confident that when you boys get set in your positions and the Axis comes up to bat, they'll go down, brother. 1, 2, 3.
Our thanks to Gary Cooper. And welcome to this letter from a Red Cross nurse somewhere in Australia.
Dear Command Performance, before leaving the States, I heard Arthur Q. Bryan on the Jack Benny Show. The same Mr. Bryan who used to wow us on the Grouch Club. I think he'd be just what the doctor ordered for a couple of my patients. What say?
We say if those patients of yours aren't in stitches already, they will be any minute. For here he is, Arthur Q. Bryan as Raymond Radcliffe, assisted by Paul Douglas.
Greetings, soldiers, sailors, and marines. And the pretty little nurse in Australia who seemed to think I was what the doctor ordered. Believe me, I'm certainly glad to find somebody in the service wants me.
Well, what do you mean, Raymond? Why shouldn't somebody in the service want you?
Oh, look me over, Mr. Douglas. Would you call this a fighting form?
No, not exactly, but surely there's some place you could fit into.
Well, that's what they thought first at the recruiting office. So they placed me in the parachute troops.
Parachute troops?
Right. They sent me up in an airplane to practice parachute jumping. We got up to 11,000 feet, and the pilot told me to jump. So I jumped.
Yes?
I counted 10 and then pulled the whipcord.
You pulled the ripcord and floated like a bird to the ground.
I pulled the whipcord and unraveled my wet flannel underwear.
Oh. Well, how about the anti-aircraft fire?
Well, just as I began to feel the cold, the boys down below started to make it hot for me, and they opened fire on me. It was colossal.
But didn't they know you were up there?
Mr. Douglas, those boys take no chances. They're white on the job.
I know that, but I don't get this idea.
Mr. Douglas, they thought I was a wimp.
Oh, well, I suppose that ended your days with the parachute troops.
That's correct. After that, I was put into the cavalry.
Cavalry? Do you know anything about horses?
Oh, that's a silly question. I know everything about horses.
I suppose you were brought up on a ranch?
I was brought up on Santa Anita Racetrack.
Oh, you mean you played the horses?
It was not play, Mr. Douglas. It was business. I had systems.
Yes, I've heard of systems, and none of them ever fail, it says here.
Well, I remember distinctly one system that I used. You may try it if you like.
Well, I'm going into this with my eyes wide open. What was the system?
Well, before I placed a bet on a horse, I looked at the track, I looked at the trainers, I looked at the jockeys, I looked at the horses, I looked at the weather, and I looked at the odds.
And what happened?
I got worked.
I see what Maybe we'd better get back to your attempts to get into the service. I suppose you were kicked out of the cavalry.
Literally, Mr. Douglas.
I think I see what you mean, Raymond.
Well, was it my fault if the horse was slippery?
The horse was slippery?
Well, he must have been. I kept sliding off his wump.
Please. Well, all right, that ends the saga of Raymond Radcliffe and the Army.
Not on your wife. As soon as I was able to get off my feet again, they made me a messenger in the artillery.
Finally, something you could do.
Absolutely. But, Mr. Douglas, the very first time I delivered a message, I had trouble with a sentry.
What happened?
Well, Mr. Douglas, it was a dark night.
Yeah?
Black as pitch. Suddenly, I am confronted with a sentry.
Yes?
I am working into the nozzle of a Springfield rifle.
A rifle? What did you do?
I said, "Hey, sentry, don't you know it isn't proper to point?"
What did the sentry do?
He said, "Halt, advance and give the order of the day."
The order of the day? Did you give it?
Absolutely. I said, 2 fried eggs, lamb chops, and French fried potatoes on a blue plate.
What about the sentry's rifle?
What'd
Wasn't
you
it
say?
loaded? I said, what about the sentry's rifle? Wasn't it loaded?
Sure, but I wasn't afraid.
Why?
I was loaded, too.
Oh, no.
Thank you, Arthur Q. Bryan. Now for Private First Class L.J. in the land of the Shamrock, and for Corporal M.J.S., now of the Canal Zone, but formerly known as the Jitterbug King of Tallahassee, Florida, the Boogie Woogie Bugle Boy of Company B, very solidly sent by those 3 sweethearts of the armed forces, the Andrews sisters.
He was a famous trumpet man from out Chicago way. He had a boogie style that no one else could play. He was the top man at his craft. But then his number came up and he was gone with the draft. He's in the army now, a blowing reveille. He's a boogie woogie bugle boy of Company B. They made him blow a bugle for his Uncle Sam. It really brought him down because he couldn't jam. The captain seemed to understand. Because the next day the cap went out and drafted a band. And now the company jumps when he plays reveille. He's a boogie woogie bugle boy of Company B. A toot, a toot, a toot, a toot, he blows it 8 to the bar. In boogie rhythm, he can't blow a note unless a bass and guitar is playing with him. He makes the company jump when he plays reveille. He's a boogie woogie bugle boy of Company B. He was the boogie woogie bugle boy of Company B. And when he plays boogie woogie bugle, he was busy as a bee. And when he plays, he makes the company jump 8 to the bar. He's a boogie woogie bugle boy of Company B. He blows it 8 to the bar. He can blow a note if the bass and guitar isn't with him. The company jumps and he plays reveille. He's a boogie woogie bugle boy of Company B. He puts the boys to sleep with boogie every night and wakes them up the same way in the early bright. They clap their hands and stamp their feet because they know how he plays. When someone gives him a beat, he really breaks it up when he plays reveille. He's a boogie woogie bugle boy of Company B. Da 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 da. And the company jumps when he plays reveille. He's a boogie woogie bugle boy of Company B.
Thank you, Andrews sisters. And thanks to Ray Noble and his orchestra for assisting you and the other vocal artists tonight. Now, in response to a bevy of requests from every section of the world where Uncle Sam has armed forces, the incomparable Edgar Bergen and the incorrigible Charlie McCarthy.
Mr. Bergen, I want to talk to you.
Yes?
It's very important this time.
Well, what is it, Charlie?
It's about a slight touch.
Oh, I see. A slight touch?
Yeah.
You mean you have a cold?
No. Slight touch of 50 cents.
Oh, I see.
Will you cough up?
Oh, I see. But, Charlie, you have no right to ask people for money unless you have been of service to them.
Of service?
Yes.
Well,
Well?
you've been working pretty steady lately, brother.
I see.
Anyway, I'll do you a favor sometime.
But, Charlie, your whole attitude towards money is wrong.
Well, I guess it must be. I'm not getting any.
You mustn't expect to receive things for nothing.
No?
Now, I remember as a very young boy, here we go, I learned that lesson from the story of Pied Piper.
Pied Piper?
Yes.
You mean a plumber with a snootful?
No. Pied Piper of Hamelin.
Oh, I see. Yes.
Would you like to hear the story?
No.
Well, I'll tell you.
Oh, we are in luck, aren't we? Yeah. Let's humor him.
Yes. Once upon a time...
Oh, it has original beginning, hasn't it?
Yes. In the little town of Hamelin, you see, this town was overrun with rodents.
Rodents?
Yes.
Rodents. What's rodents?
Oh, rats.
Well, you don't have to get nasty.
Well, no. Now, the people of the village were at a loss as how to get rid of these pests.
Uh-huh.
So one summer day, there chanced to stray.
Oh, my, get him.
Yes.
A word weaver, a poet. Do you press flowers, too?
No. Now, please, I don't want to be interrupted.
No.
A young man came to the village, and he was called Pied Piper.
What did he do?
All right. Well, he went to the mayor, and he said, I'll rid the town of rats for 1,000 guilders.
Yeah?
And the mayor said, I'll give you 50,000 guilders.
That's all right.
Yeah.
But did he get it in writing?
No.
That's bad. Yeah. Now, how's he going to get rid of the rats in the town?
Well, I'll tell you. You see, around his neck, he carried a flute.
Uh-huh.
And he played weird music on this pipe, which would make the rats follow him.
Is that so?
Yes.
They followed him?
They did, yes, uh-huh.
They'll do the same thing for a piece of cheese.
Well, no. Well... Pied Piper didn't need anything like that.
I see. Probably the music was cheesy. Now, will you please? And what did he play?
I don't know.
You don't know?
It was some very strange melody.
Uh-huh. Must have been a masterpiece. Now, will you... Probably the revel of the rodents.
Now, young man.
I can go on like this for hours, but you wouldn't like it.
I don't know what he played, but I do know that the rats followed him out of town and down to the river. And then the rats all jumped into the water and were drowned.
Yeah?
Yes.
They were drowned?
Yes, they were drowned.
Why didn't they swim?
Well, I don't know.
You don't know? No. Why did they go in the water if they couldn't swim?
Well, I don't know that.
You don't know that?
No.
Maybe they'd rather drown than listen to the music, huh?
Yes, that's what it was. That's probably what it was.
Yeah. Well, if they didn't like the music, why did they follow him?
Well, I don't know.
You don't know?
No.
It's a wonder you wouldn't get the facts to the story before you try to tell it.
All I know is that the rats followed him and they went into the water and they were drowned.
Yeah?
Yes.
I don't believe it.
You don't believe it?
No.
You don't believe it?
No.
But they did go in the water and they did drown.
I don't believe it.
Oh, why don't you?
I don't know. I just got one of those nasty streaks, I guess. I just can't explain it. I don't believe it.
I see.
You can lead a rat to water, but you can't make him sink.
I see. Nevertheless, when the Pied Piper, I
think you were right the first time.
When he came back to Hamelin to collect his 1,000 guilders, what do you think the mayor said?
I don't believe it.
Now, stop that. Well, anyway, the mayor said, I will give you 50 guilders after he'd already promised to give him 1,000.
That was a dirty deal.
Yes.
That's a great discount for cash, isn't it?
Yes, it is. Yes. And it wasn't fair, but Pied Piper got even with him.
What did he do?
Well, I'll tell you what he did. He played his pipe again, and this time all the children followed him, and he led them into a mountain.
Into a mountain?
Yes. Well, the mountain mysteriously opened up, and then after the children had entered, the mountain mysteriously closed again.
Yeah?
And the children were never heard from again.
Is that so?
Yes. And that is the story of Pied Piper.
And about as dull a thing as I've ever listened to.
Well, I don't say that it's a true story, but there is a moral to it.
Yes, there is. Never do business on credit.
Orchids to Bergen and McCarthy. Here's a note from somewhere in the North Atlantic from Seaman First Class F.A.W., who is busy helping uphold the glorious traditions of the United States Coast Guard. He says he enjoys command performance each week, but that he'd enjoy it doubly if his favorite singer, Ginny Simms, would do a number just for him. Well, here she is, Miss Ginny Simms.
Embrace me, my sweet embraceable you. Embrace me, my irreplaceable you. In your arms I find love so delectable, dear. I'm afraid it isn't quite respectable, dear. But hang it, come on, let's glorify love. Ding, dang it, I'll shout encore if I love. Don't be a naughty papa. Come to mama, do. My sweet embraceable you. I've got a feeling I'm falling in love with you. Just one look at you, my heart grew tipsy in me. You and you alone bring out the gypsy in me. I love all those many charms about you. Above all, I want my arms about you. Don't be a naughty papa. Come to mama, do. My sweet embraceable
Thank you, Miss Jenny Sims. Now for Corporal J.G.R., who plays nurse to one of those big guns in the Canal Zone Artillery Unit, and for Staff Sergeant B.R.K. in the Trinidad Air Force, the latest news from Van Buren, Arkansas, as delineated by that barnstorming buffoon, Bob Burns.
Well, now, if any of you boys want to go out and take a smoke, why, I've just got a couple of words here to the boys down in Trinidad in the Canal Zone. And you want to know how the folks are doing and what the folks are doing down in Van Buren? Well, I know you boys will be happy to know that the people down in Van Buren are all going in for this war work. They're really getting in there and doing their bit. My cousin Walford went to St. Louis to join the Army, but they turned him down. They said he had flat feet and wouldn't be able to march. Walford felt awful bad about it after walking 400 miles to get there. And my Uncle Hod tried to get in the Army. He's been trying for a long time. And just last week he got word from the examining board saying his teeth are all right. Next week, he's going to report in person. But now, you know, I believe, boys, I believe that the women folks down home are doing more than the men in this preparedness work, in this war work. My Aunt Peachy Sims, that's my old maid aunt, she's been trying to raise money for the relief. All last week, she was working down at the Red Cross Auxiliary Woman's Bazaar. She was auctioning off kisses at 10 cents apiece. And she liked the work so well, she put in over $40 of her own money. And my Aunt Peachy Sims, my Aunt Puny, rather, that's my sickly aunt. Now she tried her best to get a job as a welder, but they told her she was too puny for that. And so she finally, it just goes to show now that there's work here for everybody if they want to do something. Aunt Puny finally got a job with the Red Cross. She's posing for labels on iodine bottles. Now, I believe Grandma Snazzy's doing the most. Now, Grandma said she had to have something a little bit more exciting, so they made her a fire warden, and I want to tell you she's just doing fine. Her very first night on duty, she found Grandpa fooling around with an incendiary blonde. She said it looked like an old flame, so she put it out. Now, dear, I noticed that you boys, both of you boys, ask about Uncle Fudd. Well, I know you're going to be disappointed to hear that Uncle Fudd ain't living in Arkansas anymore. He just couldn't make a dime. I don't blame him for moving. He couldn't make a dime on that crawfish land, and so he moved over into Oklahoma. And he pretty near starved to death over there. He thought he was going to have to leave there, but do you know not long ago they found oil on his place, and he's just doing fine now. I got a letter from him the other day, and he was telling me about a new house he had just bought over there. And he said this house is the darndest thing you ever saw. He said there's one room where you don't do nothing but just sleep in. And he said there's another room just for sitting around in, and another room for eating, and one for cooking. But he said the darndest thing is a little room down the hall. He said it's all white on the inside, and he said there's a thing in one side of it where you can wash all over. And he said then there's another place there just to wash your face and hands. But he said the darndest thing is the little thing over in the corner to wash your feet in. He said when we first moved here, the thing had 2 lids on it, but he said we took them off, we didn't need them, and he said Ma's using one of them for a biscuit board. And he said we framed Grandpa's picture with it.
Well, boys, that's about all. We wish you could entertain you boys the same way you're fighting for us 24 hours a day. But time marches on, and it looks like this particular half hour is just about filled. We're also glad to fill your request, fellows, for anything you want in the way of entertainment from home. Just tear off the top of a Stuka or Mitsubi, then write and tell us what you want on your own show, Command Performance, USA. Tonight's Command Performance has originated in Hollywood, where it sometimes rains, but where the sky is never so dark, but what the stars will come out for you. This is Gene Tierney saying, so long from over here. We hope we pleased you over there.
Remember, this is your show, men. Let us know what you want. Address your letters to Command Performance USA in care of the station to which you are listening. You ask for it, we'll fill it. And remember, fellas, the Axis asked for it, too. We expect you to fill that one with lead.
Joe and Don DiMaggio and Nanny Fernandez star in Majors. Bear Crew underdog at Seattle. And so over to Ernie Smith and news in the world of sports. First, Major League results.
And first, the National League today, where the New York Giants came back at the Brooklyn Dodgers to score a 6-4 victory. Pittsburgh 6, Cincinnati Reds 2, Boston Braves 6, Philadelphia Phillies 2, St. Louis Cardinals 4, Chicago Cubs 2. And in the American League, the New York Yankees again defeated Washington 9-3. The Boston Red Sox beat Philadelphia 3-1. The St. Louis Browns defeated the Chicago White Sox 6-5. And the Detroit Tigers defeated Cleveland 6-2. In Washington today, Joe DiMaggio hit a tremendous home run, a double and a single, and drove in 5 runs today to give the New York Yankees a 9-3 victory over the Senators, their second straight triumph. And at Boston, right-hander Joe Dobson, who wound up his 1941 season with 7 consecutive triumphs, started off an impressive start to a 3-2 with Captain Jimmy Fox batting honors with scored 2 runs against right full distance. Dominic DiMaggio, who had 3 for 4 today. In Detroit today, the Detroit Tigers squared the new baseball season's first series with the Cleveland Indians, capturing a 6-2 decision behind the 7-hit pitching of Paul Dizzy Trout. Rudy York's 2-run homer in the 5th inning featured an 11-hit Detroit attack off 3 Tribe pitchers. And in the National League today, Manny Fernandez was really the star at Philadelphia. The Boston Braves made it 2 straight over the Phils, gaining a 6-2 victory behind the effective pitching and batting of Jim Tobin. Jim Tobin is the former Oakland pitcher. Except for the 2nd, when Ben Warren tripled and scored on Bobby Bragan's single, and the 9th, when Danny Litweiler homered and Tobin checked the Philadelphia club. Manny Fernandez, the rookie third stacker for the Boston club, made 4 hits in 5 times at bat. He has now made 7 hits in his first 2 games in the major leagues. Rather interesting, the report from Philadelphia today says he played with the San Francisco Seals last year. Apparently, Manny is going to hit in the major leagues. And now getting down to the National League today, the rookie ace slugged the New York Giants to victory today. A lad by the name of Marshall belted a home run with bags loaded, and the Giants trimmed the New York Dodgers 6-4. Incidentally, Higbee and Casey pitched for Brooklyn, and Adams and Melton for the New York Giants. At Cincinnati today, Elmer was no riddle to the Philadelphia Pirates, who knocked last year's leading National League hurler from the box with a 5-run outburst in the 1st inning and made it 2 straight over Cincinnati 6-2. The St. Louis Cardinals evened up their series today. They may not have the sluggers they used to have, but as long as their hitting is as timely as it was today, they'll be up near the top. The Redbirds bunched 6 of their 8 hits, including a triple and 2 doubles in 2 innings to defeat the Chicago Cubs 4-2 and to erase yesterday's setback.
Huskies favored to win despite Albrechtson's whaling.
As the annual California-Washington 3-mile regatta nears, Coach Al Albrechtson of the Washington Crew said today,
California should win the varsity and JV events.
And Coach Kai Ebright of California said,
Our crews will do their best, but the Huskies are the national champions.
The race will be staged parallel to the verdant shore of Lake Washington, Seattle, early this coming Saturday afternoon. Washington is 2-1 favorite in the varsity in spite of Al Albrechtson's pessimism.
Spanish play Verdi in California Soccer Cup Sunday.
Union Española's brilliant soccer 11, runner-up in the California Cup competition last year, collide with the Verdi Club Sunday at Crocker Amazon Field at 2:45 o'clock. It's the feature of the 2nd round of play. The Spanish enter the contest favored down the Verdi, for they upset the highly touted Rovers in the 1st round of play and boast a rugged team with plenty of fight. 2 intermediate cup preliminaries round out the program. The Mexico Athletic Club battle the Rover A team at 11:15 in the morning, while Tritonia A faces the Mercury A at 1 o'clock. And now a word from Bob Emmerich about Roos Brothers.
Well, at this time I should say something, I know, Ernie, about Roos Brothers. And you're probably expecting me to say something entirely different, something in keeping with the occasion of this, your last program of the sports page of the year. But instead, we have a complete surprise for you. Before we usher in the surprise, however, Ernie, I'd like to put in my 10 cents worth here, if I may, and wish you just all the luck in the world on your new program, which, from all I've heard, is really a swell show. Well, and now I'm going to introduce to you one of your friends and colleagues to our listening audience. Well, I haven't any more idea what he's going to say than you have, so while you make room for him alongside the microphone there, I'll present the well-known radio and sports writer, Stephen Day. See, you'd be the most perfect guy in the world to give a surprise party to.
Is my face
Boy, you've
blank?
got more surprise written all over your porcelain. Well, I've seen the month of kids' birthdays. Now let me explain why I'm, sticking my nose into your corner of the ether wave. What I have to say, I'm going to say not only for Roost Brothers and KYA and myself, but for hundreds of thousands of radio fans of yours. I might call them friends of yours, up and down the Pacific Coast. And for just about every athlete who has ever lived in or visited the Bay region for some 14 years. Maybe they wouldn't all say it in quite the same way, but I'm pretty certain that whatever they would say would be prompted by the same sort of feeling. I want to thank you, Slugger. Thank you for 14 years of bringing sports and all that sports means into my home. I want to thank you for helping me to bring such stars as Alice Marble and Don Budge and the DiMaggios. Oh, and 1,000 other top names in national sports. So you did an awful lot toward keeping them started. That I know. I want to thank you for the hundreds of sports figures you've introduced me to. Microphonically, of course, over the years. People like Joe Louis and Connie Mack and Jack Dempsey and Paul Gallico and just about every other great sports name I can think of offhand. And most of all, I want to thank you for keeping sports always on the plane it should be, for dealing with sports always constructively, for working day in and day out to keep sports prominent, always alive and important on the American scene. And then I want to congratulate you on this new show you're about to bring me. Speaking of sports, I think its name is. A show that, well, from all I've heard, is going to bring even more sports into my home and let me meet even more athletes. And now on behalf of Roost Brothers and, well, in sort of recognition for your record of 14 consecutive years on the air, 4,400 and something broadcasts, I think I heard Bob say, and also by way of thanking you for the swell job you've done for Roost Brothers Sports Shop. Oh, and I might add, too, by way of welcome you to the new Roost Brothers show, speaking of sports, I'd like to present you with this. Well, I can't think of anything else to call it, but this little gift. Lots of luck, Slug.
Well, gee, thanks very much indeed, Stephen Day. I don't know what to say, and it's a great big box. Should I open it here?
Sure, go right ahead. By all means.
How much does it weigh? Well, this is entirely apart from the routine of a show, Mark, that we had written here on the last night of this program, but I'm going to open this big bronzed paper package right here anyhow. Oh, my, that's the most beautiful piece of luggage I've ever seen in my life. Well, I can only say thank you very much indeed. Thank you very much indeed for this beautiful gift. It really is one of the finest gifts I've ever had in my life. It's absolutely a beauty, and I'm going to be very, very proud of it, and naturally I'll have it for a long, long time. And it'll commemorate this last program of this Sport Page of the Air with yours truly, Ernie Smith, in the editor's seat. Thanks very much indeed, Stephen Day, for this gift. And I don't know what else to say. Shall I go on with the program?
Run on.
I think first, Ernie, we ought to, I don't think the listeners know just what it is. It's such a beautiful bag there that they ought just
It's one of the most beautiful pieces of luggage I've ever seen in my life. I don't know what it's called, but it certainly is a beauty. It's a great, big, marvelous piece of luggage. That's all I can say. Well, I couldn't show it through the microphone, but thanks very much indeed. And, well, I guess we'll sort of go on with the program here for a little while and then say goodbye at the end of it, shall we?
And I think that appropriately it should be sports chatter. Is that right?
No, first of all, I think it would be very nice at this time, Bob Emmerich, to bring to the microphone a young fellow who is really a great lover of sports and who will, I think, carry on in a very constructive way with this Sport Page of the Air, endeavoring earnestly and sincerely to serve the listeners who have become accustomed by habit to tuning to this program at 7 o'clock for sports news and comment. He has been the public address announcer at Seal Stadium for the past 4 years, is an intimate friend of baseball players and athletes, and follows the sports scene with a fine, constructive attitude. And he's a darn good friend of mine, and I hope that all of you are going to enjoy his broadcast at 7 o'clock. His name is Jack McDonald. Jack, how do you think it'll feel to have a regular sports program and to sit in this chair opposite this same microphone express over which we've issued the sport page of the air for so long?
Well, Ernie, I have probably the greatest feeling I've had in my, shall I call it, short sport announcing life, some 5 or 6 years. I've followed sports for some 20 years, but after that great eulogy the great sports writer Stephen Day gave you, you beads of perspiration break out on me. I had intended to say that I know I have a big pair of shoes to fill in filling your sports program, and I'm going to do my best, Ernie. I believe in constructive sports along the same line as you do, and after having watched some 600 of these programs, raised, born, or why, I'm going to do my best to fill it to the utmost.
Will you make a confession, Jack McDonald? Once beat Lefty Gomez pitching.
That I did, Ernie. That I did.
Well, I think give you a little lift on this sport page of the air. Jack, I hope you do carry on giving the news of the day insofar as it covers particularly Northern California athletes in the major leagues and all around, and also that you pass in a very constructive, fine way in these times, which are, of course, very critical times when athletes are turning into the uniform and going into the service. So good luck to you, Jack McDonald, tomorrow night on your first edition of the Sport Page of the Air.
Thank you, Ernie Smith, and I want to wish you a lot of luck on your new show on Friday night at 7:30. That's next Friday night, the 17th. All you good folks, tune in. Hear Ernie Smith on his new show, and a lot of luck, Ernie.
Thanks very much indeed, Jack McDonald.
Well, now straighten things out with Sports Center.
All right, in the National Collegiate Track and Field Guide, which has just come off the press, there's an article by Dean Cromwell on pole vaulting. The byline reads, by Dean Cromwell, track coach, University of California. Cromwell is peeved as a guy trying to get a new tire, and Brutus Hamilton over at California isn't exactly happy about the proofreading work on the new guide. Gene Saracen deprecates the antics of Sammy Snead in the Augusta Masters Golf Tournament. It appears that Snead, noting one slightly of water that accumulated into a small reservoir, calmly took off his shoes and played the green barefooted. Saracen, who still wears knickers, outraged and told Sammy so. Snead answered innocently,
Well, I only wanted to see how good the grass felt, Gene.
Well, here's a little fact that's rather interesting, that the emotional, fighting Ty Cobb seldom argued with a decision with the umpire. And I think that Leo DeRocher might make a note of that. The 9-game losing streak in spring training of the Philadelphia Phils proves that the war can't alter everything, too. Merit is recognized in the San Francisco Recreation Commission. Jim Lang, who's done such a great job as supervisor of athletics for the city of San Francisco in the Recreation Department, has been promoted to assistant superintendent by Miss Josephine Randall, head of the department. A fine promotion, well earned. Eddie Muller, the boxing writer of the Examiner, was pounding out a story on the coming Navy Relief Pastor Turkey Thompson show tonight. When the phone at his elbow jangled, he answered, and a sweet voice inquired,
Could you tell me when does the World Series start?
And that measures up to the anecdote related by Daisy, the PX operator of the Examiner for the past 35 years. She was on duty at 4 o'clock one morning recently when the board lighted. She plugged in to answer, and a gruff voice demanded,
Quick now, sister. I got to know this right away. How much did Tom Sharkey weigh the night he fought Jim Jeffries at Coney Island?
And that at 4 o'clock in the morning. Consider the plight of the University of Oregon tonight. Last week, Tex Oliver, head football coach, left Eugene to become lieutenant commander in the Navy. Oregon immediately appointed Vaughn Corley, head coach of the Westfoots. Today, Corley visited the athletic department of the University of Oregon and said,
I think I'm going to the Navy next week.
Jaime Pechenek, the perennial Oakland rooter, elated over the Oaks' win last night, remarks,
If that Kristoff gets to hitting this year like he did last night, that Dean Maddox will have them apples all over the joint.
Ted Jennings, the man of manifold injuries, is riding the bench, having recovered from a broken leg. He's now suffering from a badly pulled thigh muscle. And with the advent of Ollie Beamer, the new second baseman, Ted may have to fight Ray Perry for that hot corner. Frankie Kovacs third was born this week in Berkeley. 8 pounds, 4 ounces of him. Young Kovacs has good lungs and has started emulating his dad already. His mother, Virginia Wolfenden Kovacs, is doing well, thank you. And Frankie Kovacs said today...
Think we'll call him Ace.
Well, how do you figure this one out? During spring training, SEAL outfielder Ralph Hodgson couldn't get a single bingo, and now he leads the Pacific Coast League with an average of .472. Well, I find that our time is just about up, and I want to thank Stephen Day and Bruce Brothers for this perfectly swell gift that's been given me, and so to say a very friendly goodbye to all of the regular listeners to this sport page of the air. I want to thank Bob Emmerich for being a fine partner and being very cooperative in working with me on this program, and I want to wish Jack McDonald, who succeeded me in the editorial chair and at the microphonic press of this program, good luck on the future presentations of the sport page of the air. And winding up, on behalf of Bruce Brothers, I just can't forget through habit to say, buy and buy and buy defense stamps and bonds, won't you? So that some of our good Navy bombers, the boys that are training over at Moraga, will be able to yell "for" at the enemy. And so we'll say good night, good sports, and goodbye.
Bruce Brothers, sportswear headquarters for California, with stores in San Francisco, Oakland, Berkeley, Palo Alto, San Jose, Fresno, and Hollywood, have brought you the sports page of the air with Ernie Smith, which comes to you every weeknight at 7 o'clock on KYA. And once more, I'll remind you to tune in again tomorrow night at 7 o'clock and hear Jack McDonald, the new sports page editor. This is Bob Emmerich inviting you to tune in again tomorrow night at this same time, same station with Jack McDonald. This is KYA San Francisco.
Baseball season is underway, huh? Means warm weather, barbecues, and other things. My name is Henry Chop, and we are traveling through time. We are spotlighting the week ending April 18th, 1942. We have one more hour to go with Cavalcade of America, starring Basil Rathbone, and information, please, with their guest, sports writer Grantland Rice. So stay tuned. It all comes up in just a little bit. If you love learning about World War II from the point of view of those who lived through the war years, you might want to check out our Patreon page, World War II on the Air and in Print, Old Time Radio, and News. There you will get a complete daily and near-complete Sunday newspaper as we go through the war day by day. You will not only get the newspaper, but you will get radio programs from that same corresponding date. The radio shows can be listened to or downloaded singly or in a larger file representing that day. You will not only get the newspaper and old-time radio, we do the top 10 song countdown every Saturday, share documentaries about where we are at in the war, movies that were in the theaters at the time we are reliving, and last but certainly not least, veterans interviews. Once in a while, we will also share radio and newspapers that are not from the war years. The page is set up in 2 tiers with 1 week free trials. The $2 tier gets you just the daily radio programs. The $5 tier gets you everything. I'd suggest a free trial for the $5 tier so you can get an idea of what we have to offer, and then before the week is finished, decide which tier you prefer or canceling at no cost. Once again, that's World War II on the Air and in Print, Old Time Radio, and News on Patreon. The link is in both the description to this video and in the comments section below. Hope to see you there for the duration. Come back next week, and we are going to feature the week ending April 25th, 1942, as we go through World War II week by week for 2 hours every Saturday night. Next week, we are going to feature Freedom's People, which was an early civil rights radio program. You'll find that very interesting. Vox Pop, the mobile gas news that aired over WBBM in Chicago. Can you top this? And what are we fighting for? So some great radio next week. You're going to find that interesting as we learn about World War II through radio. Coming up next, we have the Cavalcade of America, starring Basil Rathbone. Many of you know who Basil Rathbone is. He played Sherlock Holmes on the radio and in the movies for a very long time. And he also played in one of the films that has been getting a lot of views as of late that I've featured on my channel, part of a double feature. I think it was a horror movie that he was a star in that's been getting a lot of views. I don't remember. I'd have to go back and look. It's funny how that works. works. You can have a video up for a year or so, and all of a sudden it garners interest for whatever reason. But anyway, the Cavalcade of America was, at this point in time, they would dramatize historical events or biographies in United States history. And it's a very interesting program. A lot of times they are sugar-coated, but as the war progresses, they would eventually start doing more contemporary stories until the end of the war. Following the Cavalcade of America from April 13th, 1942, we are going to move over to April 17th, 1942, and Information Please, which was sort of the Jeopardy. I like to refer to it as the Jeopardy of the 1930s and 40s. And the guest on this program was sports writer Grantland Rice. So we have some great old-time radio coming up right now. Let's turn back on this old tube radio. That's our time machine, and give this stuff a listen. See you in an hour.
Starring Basil Rathbone in an original radio play, A Continental Uniform, on the Cavalcade of America, sponsored by DuPont. Our play tonight is a story of a great American patriot and hero who, through personal grievances and frustrations, came to gather the seeds of his own corruption along the way. And finally, because there could be no turning back on the devious road he had traveled alone, reaped the bitter harvest of his treason. It is the story of Benedict Arnold. Our play is written by Robert Tallman. Basil Rathbone appears in it by courtesy of Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer Studios, in whose production, The Man from Martinique, he will soon be seen. On the Cavalcade of America, DuPont presents A Continental Uniform, starring Basil Rathbone.
A traitor is best remembered not for how he lived, but for how he finally died. That's why we commence our story not at the beginning, but somewhere near the end. This is England, the last year of the 18th century, Westminster Abbey. It looks much the same as it did a few years ago. But there's a monument that's somewhat new, for it says, "Sacred to the memory of John Andre, who fell a sacrifice to his zeal for king and country, October 2nd, 1780. Before it stand a man and woman aged beyond their years. They're Benedict Arnold and his wife, Peggy."
John Andre. Think of it, Peggy. A man has to be dead to have a shrine in Westminster Abbey. Yet Andre is more alive than I am.
You mustn't torture yourself this way, Benedict. What's done is done. You mustn't come here anymore.
I mustn't come here anymore. Must wear my scarf. Must take the physic the doctor left. Shh, Benedict. What have I become, a doddering old fool to be told what I must do by a wife who's much too young and handsome to be anything but a nursemaid to my old age?
Benedict, please, don't raise your voice. Remember where we are.
Sorry. I mustn't rouse the dead, must I? I can feel Andre's spirit rising now to take you in his arms, to take you away from me.
I knew what I was doing when I married you instead of John Andre, Benedict.
Did you? Then we're both mad.
Why do you say that? Because Andre died a martyr? You might have died the same? You took the same chances?
No. Andre took his chances for a loyalty he can thank God he died with. I took mine for revenge and 30 pieces of silver. There's a high and dangerous business for a general in a mighty cause. God help me, Peggy. I'm sick, sick.
Come. It's damp and chilly here. You know how the damp brings back the pain in your leg.
Then I'll stay. That pain is my only reminder that I once had honorable wounds.
Portrait of a Traitor. How did he come here to stand with festering conscience among the illustrious dead of a foreign land? Come, let us go to another place in time, leave off our wondering, and see him for a moment as he was. Patriot, hero, not yet for sale to the highest bidder. A military hospital at Albany, the second year of the War for Independence. A surgeon bends over Benedict Arnold.
No, no, no. I will not allow you to re-split my leg. If the leg refuses to mend, I'll have it cut off. I'm losing something more precious than a leg lying here inactive.
Come now, you exaggerate, General.
Exaggerate? Have you seen this newspaper? 6 officers cited by the Congress for promotion, rewarded with important posts, and every man of them inferior to me. I am passed over, completely neglected.
Well, why not send a letter to the Congress?
Letters? I've sent them letters. They care nothing for victories. They want to know how much money it's costing. You can't be a general and keep books at the same time. Don't they realize that?
Perhaps in time they will.
Time is our greatest enemy. And the Congress can use more of it than anybody. Scoundrels. Little they care for independence when it comes to paying for it.
And yet they're all the Congress we've got, General Arnold. I thank God we've any Congress at all.
Oh, yes, I suppose you're right. And yet?
Yes, General?
If I had the choice to make, I'd hang every mother son of them.
What?
You think that treason? Are we to be ruled by a set of petty and myopic bookkeepers? Better treason than that.
Better treason?
Well, I've had my share of humiliation at their hands. Yes, I've had my share. But I'm fighting still. And God willing, I'll fight to the end in the service of my country.
General Washington. General Benedict Arnold.
At your service, General Washington.
It's a pleasure to see you on your feet again, General Arnold.
Thank you, sir. It's a pleasure to be on them, especially when they bring me to your quarters.
That reminds me, General Arnold. I have your application for a new commission, but I just now discovered a complication. Apparently, you wanted to resign your commission before you were wounded.
That's right, sir, I did.
But why?
If you don't mind, sir, I'd rather not discuss it. Believe me, it was a matter of honor. I had personal differences with General Gates.
Were you perhaps a little hasty in your judgment of Gates?
General Washington, don't you know it's a matter of gossip in your official family that General Gates is in a conspiracy to have yourself removed from command and have himself placed in your boots?
I make it my policy never to take notice of any rumors, General Arnold, of any kind.
By that, sir, you mean rumors concerning me?
You will find me most outspoken in what I mean, General Arnold. I believe there is some justice in your contention that your services have not been properly rewarded. Therefore, I am offering you a commission to command the Continental troops in Philadelphia. That is, if that leg of yours will permit.
General Washington, you have no need to worry about my leg. In a few months, I'll be throwing away this cane. And in 6 months, sir, I'll be dancing in Philadelphia.
You are listening to Basil Rathbone in an original radio play, A Continental Uniform, on the Cavalcade of America, sponsored by DuPont, makers of better things for better living through chemistry.
This is the portrait of a traitor. The likeness is not altered appreciably in 6 months' time. A man of medium height, a little too fond of eating, perhaps. But the bearing is military. He's a great favorite with the ladies, or so it seems. Come, let us look at him now. On the crest of the wave, General Benedict Arnold, commander of Philadelphia, the 4th year of the War for Independence. He's dancing with a lovely lady, Peggy Shippen. She smiles upon him.
Please, General Arnold, you mustn't hold my hand so tightly. People will notice.
I want them to notice. If you don't watch out, I shall kiss you right here and now, and then we shall have to be engaged.
Please. Let's go out on the balcony, shall we?
I am at your service, Miss Shippen.
Ah, the air's better here, isn't it?
Miss Shippen.
Yes?
Peggy.
What is it, Benedict?
I hesitate to speak for one so far above me as yourself, being a widower of uncertain military fortunes, and you, a young girl, waiting mayhap for a fresher, younger love.
I gave you credit for understanding me better than you do, sir. If you believe that I'm pining for the absent Major Andre, you're mistaken. He came here a man, an officer in a brave, determined army. Then the rebels retook our city.
Peggy?
The Continentals, then, if you like that better. But you are rebels against the king, aren't you?
That's not the question.
Oh, but it is very much the question.
Oh, Peggy, you leave me with scarcely anything to say.
Then don't say anything. Just take me in your arms.
Peggy. Oh, my darling, my precious. If you only knew how I've longed for you ever since the moment I met you.
Father will be furious, you know. He doesn't think much of soldiers' pay.
But I'll be a man of property after the war is over. If our side wins, that is. And it will win, God willing.
You believe their promises?
I believe in General Washington.
General Washington, yes, but what of the Congress?
Oh, bother the Congress. Will you marry me, Peggy?
Perhaps. You don't understand me very well as yet, my dear. But you will. I feel certain you will.
Well, General Arnold, my congratulations. Philadelphia held a greater conquest for you than I suspected it would. My congratulations,
Thank
sir.
you, General Washington. You'll excuse me if I come straight to the point. It's about these newspapers that are printing these dreadful stories, slanders about my wife and myself.
I told you once, General Arnold, that I never put stock in rumors.
But the public does, General Washington. What am I to do? I'm charged with lining my own pockets under the guise of suppressing profiteers, with favoring Tories, with every conceivable evil a man could be charged with.
These charges aren't true, are they, General Arnold?
General Washington, on my honor as a man and a soldier, there is not one word of truth in them.
Then demand a court-martial.
Court-martial?
The offensive, my boy. Your own tactics. Have you forgotten Saratoga so soon?
Ah, there's a point. Challenge them to produce proof of the charges. General Washington, God bless you. You've saved my bacon again.
And you'd have done as much for me, I know. Of all my official family, Arnold, I have admired you most, save one, and that is General Lafayette, whom I have regarded as my own son.
Arnold?
Oh, Captain Pell.
Mrs. Arnold, the trial is over. General Arnold is coming directly, madam.
Yes, I see him. He's coming now. Please go, Captain. Thank you.
Good day, Mrs. Arnold.
Driver! Driver!
Yes, General Arnold.
Drive us home.
Yes, sir. Hey, get up.
Barking dogs. Tin-headed blunderers. Convict me of hauling groceries in public wagons, eh?
Darling, don't mind.
Reprimand from General Washington. Stinking skunks! Trying to cover up their putrid stench that way, black-hearted vultures. Stupid long-nosed curs, nuzzling for rat holes. Civil authority, eh? Rotten political scoundrelism.
You mustn't feel that way about it.
They'll be sorry. Every one of them. They'll regret this to their dying day.
What happens to a man when his mind is made up? When he decides to betray his inmost loyalty? Does his face change? No, it must not. It's the mask against the guilty secret. If he's Benedict Arnold, he develops patience, cunning. He no longer demands, he asks, coolly, reasonably, for what he wants. His face is a miracle of stolidity when his friend expresses surprise.
Arnold, I don't understand this request. West Point. There's nothing to do there. I've always thought of you as a man of action.
West Point is a vital post, General Washington. If we lose it, we'd be cut in two.
Yes, it's important, but we couldn't possibly lose it.
Haven't I been crucified enough? At any rate, sir, give me command of the post at West Point, at least until my wound is healed.
Very well, Arnold. I don't understand it, but if West Point's what you want, you can have it.
West Point. There's an odd choice of temple for the kiss of treason. A bleak barracks on the Hudson. Who would have dreamed it might be important someday? Who but a great general? Who but Benedict Arnold? He's making it important. He's putting West Point on the map. The lamp burns late in General Arnold's study.
Benedict.
Oh, yes, Peggy? I'll be along in a moment. Can't you sleep?
It's so quiet. So deadly quiet in this place.
Well, we shan't be here much longer.
You're writing the letter to them?
Yes, the last one.
This is my fault. I shouldn't have let you begin this.
Peggy, you have nothing to do with what I have done or will do in this business. Remember that. Never forget it.
I could see everything clearly before you wrote that last letter. Why did you have to tell them where General Washington was crossing the river? He was your friend. He might have been killed or captured.
He was my only friend. That's why I had to do it. Don't you understand? A friend can hurt more than an enemy.
And when you make an enemy, your friend?
We shall see. I told you this was the last letter, Peggy. I'm offering West Point to the British for £20,000. Major Andre?
At your service, sir.
Oh. You know what we're to do?
I have my orders, sir.
Have I Sir Henry's word that he agrees to my terms?
We will pay your price. £20,000 for the surrender of West Point. Half that if we fail.
Good. Tonight I'll take you to a friend's house, Major Andre. We can talk better there.
I had no orders to go inside American lines.
You have nothing to fear. You must take my word for it.
Your word?
I'll give you a pass in the name of John Anderson. Here is my part of the bargain. The plans of West Point. Here, come on, take them.
My orders were not to accept any papers, General Arnold.
I'm afraid you have no choice, Major Andre.
Very well, sir. I will take the papers.
Don't forget, your name is John Anderson. Yes, I don't know when I've laughed so heartily at breakfast. Colonel Hamilton, I'm tempted to match your excellent stories with one of my own.
Let's hear it, General Arnold.
Well, I knew a Connecticut farmer once who was walking along a rope. Excuse me, gentlemen. What is it, Major?
This report just came. A suspicious character has been captured down the river. His name is John Anderson.
Anderson? Were there any papers on him?
Yes, of a most incriminating nature, sir. They've been sent to General Washington.
Washington?
Is anything the matter, General?
No. It's a routine matter. Major, keep me posted. Well, where was I?
You were telling the story of the farmer, General.
Oh, yes, I was. Well, this farmer walking down the road, he met one of his field hands, you see, and he said, "Look at that beautiful sky. There's nothing more beautiful than the setting sun." And the field hand said, "That ain't no setting sun. That's your home burning down." Excuse me a moment, gentlemen. I must speak to my wife. Major.
Yes, sir?
Please order my horse unstabled. I've an errand at once.
I'll take care of it, General Arnold.
Orderly. General Arnold.
Yes?
Peggy, I must speak to you.
Of course, dear. Oh, what is it?
Andre has been captured.
No. Oh, no, I don't believe
Stop it, Peggy. Pull yourself together.
I can't. I won't believe it.
I failed, Peggy. You must face it.
Oh, we must do something. You must do something. You're too clever to be caught. You must talk your way back into favor, as you have so many times before.
Yes, maybe I could at that. I could say I contacted the enemy for purposes of finding out their spies.
Yes.
Who is it?
Collins, sir.
Oh, well, come in.
Pardon, ma'am. Beg to report, sir. General Washington has been reported 2 miles over in Connecticut on his way here. Shall we send a detail to escort him?
Yes. Oh, of course. Take care of it, will you, Major?
Yes, sir.
Benedict, luck is on your side again. General Washington is your friend.
No, I can't face him. I'd stay and face anyone else, but not him.
You leave me to face him?
I must, for both our sakes. For the child, too.
Oh, but what will I do? What will I say?
Swear you know nothing. Have hysterics. Do anything faint. But I can't stay here and face Washington. Goodbye, my darling.
Oh, where will I come to?
I don't know. Only come. Come when I tell you. I'll need you desperately.
Don't be sad, darling. Think, this boat is carrying us to a new life in England.
New life? Does anybody ever have a new life?
Darling, don't think of the past. You've served the king. In London, you'll be a hero.
A hero? Look, Peggy. America is growing smaller and smaller. Look at it, Peggy. Look at it as long as you can. We may never see it again. Your Royal Highness, I have come to offer my services to my country.
Your country? Which country do you mean now, Mr. Arnold?
I've heard of the coalition. England and France will soon be at war. I am ready to accept any sort of command.
You have forced this interview. I will be frank. What you ask is impossible.
Impossible, Your Highness?
Mr. Arnold, no British officer would serve with you.
Oh, excuse me, sir. Have I permission to sit at your table?
Oh, please, be seated, sir. Be seated. And delighted to talk to somebody.
Oh, thank you so much.
Oh, this English nation. What food and weather. One sauce, one weather. Both miserable. And on top of it, I must go to America.
America? At one time, I lived in America.
Oh, what fortune, sir. I am the Count Maréchal de Talleyrand.
Oh, yes, Count Talleyrand.
Perhaps you'll be so kind as to give me an introduction to some of your friends and countrymen, eh?
Count Talleyrand, I'm the only American in the world who cannot give you letters to any man in his own country. I am Benedict Arnold.
Portrait of a traitor. Old and hunched now. Dying now in a lonely room in a foreign city. He looks up into the face of the woman who leans over him. His wife. The most beautiful woman in America has been his wife. Her lips are moving, but only a few words reach his ears.
Darling, try to rest.
Peggy,
Yes, dear?
all I've left. Peggy, this is the end. It's over. And I'm glad it is now.
No. Don't say it, darling.
What have I ever offered you all these years? Shame. Disgrace. Now there's nothing left. Peggy,
Yes, darling.
bring me my Continental uniform.
You...
And bring me the epaulets and sword knots General Washington gave me.
Yes, darling. I will.
I want to die in my old uniform, Peggy. May God forgive me for putting on any other.
Thank you, Basil Rathbone. And now another story, of chemistry this time. Gain Whitman tells how cellophane has enlisted for the duration to help assure our nation of victory.
Cellophane is helping in the war efforts on two fronts, not only with the armed forces, but behind the lines, doing a conservation job. Light and thin, but strong, cellophane offers greater protection for a pound of material used than other packaging materials. The saving in weight and bulk is vital in wartime. Because they are light and compact, cellophane packages save transportation. Coal, oil, rubber, gasoline, trucks, all must be conserved. Every pound hauled by rail or truck demands its toll in fuel and wear. Every inch of shipping space is precious. Here are some examples of cellophane helping to conserve. Figures tell the story. For instance, packaging 1,000 pounds of puffed cereal in cellophane takes only a tenth as much material. Or when you're packaging rice, cellophane cuts the amount of material you need right in half. Another example, milk bottles. When you use cellophane hoods to protect bottled milk and cream, you cut the amount of protective material you need by nearly 70%. Quick frozen foods are a conservation measure in themselves, and cellophane gives them a plus factor. To can 1 million pounds of peas, for example, takes more than 200,000 pounds of metal and thousands of pounds of shipping cases. To package the same amount of quick frozen peas takes no metal at all, just cartons, waxed paper, and cellophane. And you can ship 1 million pounds of quick frozen peas in cellophane in 31 freight cars, as against 64 for canned peas. Then, too, cellophane is being used to add moisture-proofness and grease-proofness to paperboard containers, to permit their broader use and save precious metal. On some products, the metal body of a container is being replaced with paperboard, laminated with cellophane, saving 70% to 80% of the metal. Cellophane is used for a good many purposes by our armed forces, in packaging bandages, compresses, surgical dressings, and drugs for the Army and Navy, for instance. Not only because of its sanitary and moisture-proof qualities, but because it's an effective wrapping to keep out poison gas. Hospitals use it for surgical masks. Surgeons rely on the film as a cover for wet dressings. And the Army uses cellophane in packaging some of the balanced emergency rations that have taken the place of the hardtack and corned willy of the First World War. In airplane plants, cellophane speeds the job of assembling planes, although we can't tell you how until the war is over. Maps and charts are surfaced with cellophane to keep them free of grease and dirt and shield them against the weather. And delicate instruments and precision tools used in the war industries are shipped in cellophane to cut down the chances of corrosion. These are a few of the points in America's war effort at which DuPont cellophane is handling important jobs, doing its part to safeguard our democracy, for which in time of peace DuPont works to produce better things for better living through chemistry.
Next Monday on the Cavalcade of America, DuPont will present another play with a stirring and vital message for men and women of our time. Its title, In This Crisis. The star, Claude Rains. Don't forget, next Monday night at the same time, Claude Rains in This Crisis. The musical score for tonight's program was composed and conducted by Robert Armbruster. This is John Heaston sending best wishes from DuPont.
This program came to you from Hollywood. This is the National Broadcasting Company.
It's 8:30.
It's 8:30, New York time. Time to wake up, America, and stump the experts. Each week at this time, Lucky Strike sets up a panel of 4 experts willing and able to take on all questions. For every question used, Lucky Strike will reward you with $10 in defense stamps. If the question is muffed, you get a total of a $50 defense bond plus the 24-volume set of the Encyclopedia Britannica. Send your questions to Information Please, 480 Lexington Avenue, New York City. If our editorial staff edits your questions a bit, don't fret over it. In case of similarity, we'll have to be sole judge of who shall be paid, and all questions become the property of Information Please. Now light up a Lucky Strike as I present our Master of Ceremonies, book reviewer of the New Yorker magazine, Clifton Fadiman. Mr. Fadiman.
Ladies and gentlemen, Information Please continues as before, a completely impromptu and spontaneous program. Tonight, our massive intellect consists of our two regulars, Franklin P. Adams and John Kieran, and to make up the quartet, we introduce our old friend Jan Struther, creator of Mrs. Miniver, and one of the world's great biologists, a worthy bearer of a great name, Julian Huxley. I might mention, by the way, that over in London they have an Information Please, too, which they call the Brain Trust. And it's true, Mr. Huxley, that you're one of the regular members of the Brain Trust. That's right. Do you see any difference between the way in which we run our Brain Trust and the way in which you run yours over there so far?
Well, I gather that we do more discussion and you have more straight questions.
Well, we'll see. We may give you a chance to do some discussion before the evening is very much older. We'll begin, Mr. Huxley, with a rather funereal question, if that's all right with you, coming to us from Mrs. Joseph M. Bryan of Everglades, Florida. From your knowledge of familiar songs, tell me who rested in the following ways. Who rested in the old churchyard? In the old churchyard. This is a burial question. Mr. Kieran.
The old churchyard in a corner, something in a lone, Sweet Alice. Lies under the stone.
That's correct, yes. Very good. And who was being informed of that fact in the old song?
Ben Bolt.
Ben Bolt, yes. In the old churchyard in the valley, Ben Bolt.
By Thomas Dunn English.
By Thomas Dunn English is right. How about someone who rested over the sea in an old song? Miss Struther.
My bonnet.
My bonnet, yes. And who rested by thy murmuring stream? By thy murmuring stream. Mr. Kieran.
My Mary.
My Mary, yes. Can you give us the
Sleep
line?
by thy flow gently, sweet afton, among thy green braes.
Yes. Now, Mr. Huxley, how would you discuss a thing like that? You see? I'm afraid we're much more simple over here than you are over there. Finally, who rested in the billowy wave? In the billowy wave. Mr. Adams.
Titwillow.
Yes. First name? Tom. Wasn't it a Tom Tit?
A little Tom Tit.
Yes. First name Tom, last name Titwillow. Quite right. What is the line that would give us his final resting place? Can you remember it?
And he... something, sigh and something and a gurgle he gave, and he flung himself into the billowy wave.
Yes, that's approximately it. He plunged himself into the billowy wave, and an echo arose
from the suicide's grave.
And so...
Titwillow.
Yes, that was Mr. Adams' solo. Here's one from Frank L. Martin of Arlington, Virginia. Now, let us suppose that 3 male admirers are courting their girls, and these girls are all girls in the animal kingdom. They are not human. The first one waves a large claw in the air. The second offered a package of food as part of his courting. And the third showed his intended building material. Who in each case would be doing the courting? Mr. Huxley.
First would be a fiddler crab.
What would he be doing again?
He'd be waving his large colored claw in the air.
Yes.
One large one and one small one.
He keeps the small one hidden?
He keeps the small one to eat with. The female has 2 small ones.
And no large one?
No large one.
And what does the female fiddler crab do when she sees this large claw being waved at her? Does she wave back?
No. She keeps it to herself, but sometimes she gives in.
I see. You've apparently watched this sort of thing going on in the course of your career. The fiddler crab is right. What's the female of the fiddler crab called, by the way? Is there is she called a fiddler crab, too?
That's right.
Very good. Now, how about the second, who offered a package of food?
That would be an impid fly.
I beg pardon?
That would be a fly of the family Impidae.
Would be offering what?
Offering a packet of... He'd offer another insect wrapped up in a silken cocoon to his mate.
An insect smaller than himself. Must be a very, very tiny one. And would the spider also offer food to his mate? Intended mate, shall we say?
Not generally, no.
Well, I don't. Over here on this white card, it says that the spider does do that. I don't know. It says that the spider often carries a fly in a highly edible condition around to attract his.
Well,
his mate.
he may do it sometimes, but the impid flies do it regularly.
You have me there, Mr. Huxley. I'll bet that's true. The little impid flies. All right. Now, what the third would be showing building material to his sweetheart.
Well, quite a lot of birds do that. Penguins do that.
Penguins?
Yeah.
They do? What sort of building material do they offer?
Stones.
Really? That's a fine thing to offer. Yeah. Stones.
And there was a man who studied the penguins in the Antarctic, and the penguins, they don't always restrict themselves to their mates. When anything interesting strikes them, they go and offer stones to them. And he said he was so embarrassed the first time a male penguin offered him a stone.
Well, are these penguins who don't make any distinction, are they the more intelligent or the less intelligent penguins who offer these stones variously?
I think average intelligence.
Average intelligence? Well, very good, Mr. Huxley, on that. I see that you've spent your life to some advantage. Here's one from Mrs. M.C. Bowler of Minneapolis. I'm going to test your knowledge of some quotations. Who, according to a familiar quotation, was all tears. Was all tears. That's all I'm going to give you in the way of a hint. Does it ring a bell? Mr. Huxley.
Niobe.
Very good, yes. It's, what's the source of the quotation? However, the answer is correct. Niobe. It's from the first soliloquy of Hamlet. He's describing his mother. Remember that, Mr. Kieran?
Yes, that's right.
A little month or ere those shoes were old with which she followed my poor father's body, like Niobe, all tears. I think it's very good, Mr. Huxley, getting that. That's not too well known. Now, who, according to a familiar quotation, was all mimsy, M-I-M-S-Y, Miss Strother?
The Borogoves.
Ah, yes, the Borogoves. Mr. Huxley?
The Borogoves.
Borogoves. You shouldn't put in your R that way.
Very sorry.
All mimsy were the Borogoves, and the mome raths outgrave, of course, and that means, Miss Strother...
Pass that.
This is your chance to tell everybody what the line means. No one ever has discovered what it does mean. Who was all for one?
What's that?
Who were all for one? Mr. Adams.
Equity.
A very true and very good answer. Mr. Kieran, is there another?
Athos, Porthos, Aramis, and D'Artagnan.
Yes, the three musketeers, all for one and one for all. It is the motto of equity, though, isn't it, Mr. Adams?
So I've heard.
It never occurred to me. Very good. Finally, who was all forlorn? All forlorn. Mr. Huxley?
The milkmaid.
Yes, that's correct. This is the maiden, all forlorn, who milked the cow with the crumpled horn. Do you know why she was all forlorn, Mr. Huxley? Do you have any idea? Did it come to mind at all? I mean, this is one of those things you might want to discuss.
Because it rhymes with horn.
Because it rhymes with horn. Yes, I should say. Discussion is very primitive over here. Nathan Fine of Brooklyn sends this one in. I think we ought to get all on this. What national organizations are now using these catch sentences on their advertising posters? These are slogans. Defend tomorrow today. Defend tomorrow today. Who's using that slogan? A very good one, and a very good organization that uses it. To it, the Boy Scouts of America. The Boy Scouts of America, Mr. Other and gentlemen. That's one wrong. Here's another. If you can't go, give. If you can't go, give. Mr. Adams.
Sounds like the USO.
No, it would be very appropriate.
Red Cross.
The Red Cross is right, Mr. Adams. Yes, the American Red Cross War Fund, particularly, is using that slogan now. You buy 'em, we'll fly 'em. You buy 'em, we'll fly 'em. Miss Strother.
That's for defense bonds.
Yes, for the government defense bonds and stamps. Well, that sends one defense bond, a $50 one, to Mr. Fine, plus a set of the Britannica. And sends us on to this question from Daniel M. Kelleher, Jr. of Winthrop, Massachusetts. Who are these military men? They're all fictional characters. The first is, we'll begin with a private, Private Terence Mulvaney. Private, we have 4 hands on that. Miss Strother?
The character out of Kipling's stories about the 3 privates in the British Army.
Yes. What are those stories called? The whole collection.
Soldier 3.
Yes, and who are the other two?
Leroyd
Very good.
and...
Mr. Kieran?
Stanley Arthurus.
Yes. Leroyd comes from what county, Miss Strother?
Yorkshire.
Yes, and Arthurus? Mr. Huxley?
From London.
Yes, he's a Cockney. Major Dobbin. Mr. Kieran.
Major Dobbin is the faithful friend in Vanity Fair.
Yes. Very good. Major General Stanley, Mr. Adams.
Major General Stanley is the man that sings a patter song in the Pirates of Penzance.
Very good. That's quite right. And Captain Gooding, Gooding, Mr. Adams.
Captain Gooding is the boy that was spoken to in perhaps in the first stanza of Yankee Doodle.
Yes, I don't know whether it's the first or not, but it's certainly one that most of us don't know.
Close to the front.
That's right. Father and I went down to camp along with Captain Gooding, and there we see the men and boys as thick as hasty pudding. I don't think most of us remember that verse, Mr. Adams. I think it's very clever of you.
They do in my set.
That may be so. Edith Sorensen of Van Nest, New York, sends this one in. Get 3 out of 4. And it's going to be a musical question, Mr. Other and gentlemen. And each of these compositions that you hear played, there are going to be 4 of them in all, should suggest some scientific occupation. Let's see if they do. Mr. Kahn, let's have the first. Mr. Kieran.
A geologist.
Yes, why?
Rock of Ages.
Yes, very good. Rock of Ages, cleft for me, and so forth. Did that not occur to any of you other brilliant wits? Mr. Adams, it did?
Yes.
You just didn't want to say. I know how it is. Very well, let's have the second. Mr. Adams, you seem affronted.
Don't know what the tune is.
You don't know what that tune is?
No, sir.
Oh, a very familiar tune, Miss Strother.
I know the tune, but I don't know what it suggests. La cucaracha.
Yes, doesn't it suggest any kind of scientific occupation to you, Mr. Kieran?
An entomologist.
Yes, an entomologist.
Oh, yes,
Of course. La cucaracha, Mr. Huxley, this is more or less in your line.
Z cockroach.
Yes, the cockroach. It's part of the province of an entomologist, isn't it, to know something about cockroaches? Not only entomologists. Very well, now the third. Shouldn't be surprised if we needed Mr. Levant here this evening on this one.
He wouldn't know that.
He wouldn't know that? You mean that's too familiar, Mr. Adams? Well, does
Even
it...
I don't know it.
Does it come to you, Mr. Kieran?
I don't know what the song is.
Well, it's Saint-Saëns, Danse Macabre.
Oh.
Well, and that would recall what sort of scientist, Mr.
An undertaker.
Well, yes, an undertaker, hardly a scientific occupation.
Anthropologist.
Yes, or an anatomist, let's say, having to do with skeletons. Well, that gives us one wrong. We have to get the next one right. Go ahead. Miss Strother?
Chiropodist.
Why do you say that?
The flat foot floozy with the Floyd fly.
Very good, and I congratulate you on your mastery of our language, Miss Strother. Well, now, so far, Lucky Strike has paid out just one $50 defense bond, and that means one set of the Britannica. Now, Mr. Cross, always a believer in order and logic, reminds us of the importance of putting first things first.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, in choosing a cigarette, it's of first importance to make sure of fine tobacco. For clearly, in a cigarette, it's the tobacco that counts. That's why year after year at tobacco markets below the Mason-Dixon line, the makers of Lucky's consistently pay the price to get the milder, better-tasting leaf. For example, at auctions in Tabor City, North Carolina, season of 1939, the American Tobacco Company paid 30% more for the tobacco it bought for its cigarettes and other tobacco products. Yes, 30% above the average market price published by the United States Department of Agriculture. And that crop, properly aged, mellowed, and blended with other fine crops, is in the Lucky's you buy today. No wonder that with independent experts, with men who know tobacco best, it's Lucky's 2-to-1. Mr. Fadiman, have I shown that it's worthwhile to smoke the smoke tobacco experts smoke?
Mr. Cross, you've rendered a very complete accounting of the reasons and in only 58 seconds. Now, Miss Strother and gentlemen, we'll go on with the second half of the program. Here's one from Hollywood, California, from Bernice Cornell. It's about famous ifs in poetry. Let's get 3 out of 4. I guess Mr. Roosevelt would call this an iffy question. It's full of ifs. If it were done. If it were done, Mr. Kieran.
If it were done, when 'twere done, then 'twere well that 'twere done quickly. Hamlet.
Yes.
Yes, Hamlet.
No, Macbeth.
Macbeth.
Very good. What is Macbeth thinking about?
He has a little matter of murder on his mind.
That's right. Which he disposes of pretty quickly. That's a very famous sentence in a famous speech. Now, here's another if. If all the land were apple pie...
And all the something
We
were
were
drink.
Ah, you all do remember that. Can you go on with it, Mr. Other and gentlemen?
What
should we have to drink?
have to drink?
Yes, a little ragged. And all the trees were bread and cheese. What should we have for a drink? Who wrote it, Mr. Adams?
Anon.
Anon is right this time. Here's another if. If love were what the rose is. Oh, we have 3 hands on that. Mr. Adams.
Swinburne.
Swinburne is right. How does it go on? Do you remember the rest of the if?
There are several stanzas, and they all begin with if. If
That's
you were
fair
April's
enough.
lady and I were Lord of May is another one.
That
If
gives us...
love were like the roses.
That's the one.
And I were like the leaf.
That's good. Our lives would grow together in sad or singing weather and so forth. And what's the poem called, Mr. Kieran? A Match. Very good, by Swinburne. Here's another if. And if sometimes our conduct isn't all your fancy paints, Mr. Kieran.
Single men in something barracks don't grow into plaster saints by Rudyard Kipling.
Yes, the poem called?
That's Tommy Atkins.
Tommy Atkins, yes. Very good, Mr. Kieran. Well, that gives us all 4 ifs out of 4. You're doing very well this evening, gentlemen. Now, how about this from Robert Pollock of Brooklyn? This is a question about heredity. I'm going to pose some questions about resemblances of children to their parents. Let us take the case of Mr. and Mrs. A. Mr. and Mrs. A are both blue-eyed, and they'd like a little variety in their home. That's what it says here. The phrasing is a little odd. I mean, they hope to have a brown-eyed baby. You see, they're both blue-eyed, and they hope to have a brown-eyed baby. Now, what are the probabilities of their hopes coming true? Mr. Huxley?
Well, none, unless they were one of the or other of them was a candidate for Reno.
I see what you mean, yes. Almost immediately, should we say. Why would the
You
chances
really
be
don't
slim?
mean Mr. and Mrs. A. My folks do, you?
Now, Mr. Huxley, why would the chances of having a brown-eyed baby, resulting from 2 blue-eyed children, be rather slim? Could you explain briefly to us?
Well, because the blue eye is what is called a recessive and the brown eye a dominant, and you can be brown-eyed and yet have blue in the background, so to speak, so that it can come out in the children.
Yes.
You can't with the blue.
Very good. All parents who are listening in, well, eyes that are blue and would like a brown-eyed baby, just out of luck. Now let us take the case of Mr. and Mrs. B, just to get away from your folks, Mr. Adams. Now, Mr. and Mrs. B are both brunettes. They're both brunettes, and they're very anxious to have a blonde-haired baby. What's the probability of their wishes coming true? Can anyone, Mr. Huxley, will you help us out again?
Well, it's perfectly possible.
Yes, it is quite possible. Why?
Well, for the same reason, for the opposite reason that we had over the blue eye.
But I can't carry that in my head. We had that only 30 seconds ago. You want to rephrase it for us, Mr. Huxley?
Because you can be a brunette and yet have the hereditary factor for blonde in your constitution, and if each of the parents had that factor, then 1 out of 4 children on the whole would be, on the average, would be blonde.
Well, that's fair enough. Very good, and I think very clear, Mr. Huxley. Now, how about another one? This is the sad case of Mr. and Mrs. C. Now, Mr. and Mrs. C are both very short, and they've been pushed around most of their lives, being very small people, and they're looking forward to having a big, strapping son. Now, I know the chances are Mr. Adams. Mr. Adams, what do you know
The chances are not only tremendous, they happen.
You say that with some feeling.
I know it's so.
You know it's so? Yeah, so what, that is very true. The answer that Mr. Adams gave is correct, but Mr. Huxley, you know as well as I do that Mr. Adams hasn't the slightest idea why. Mr. Kieran?
I don't think that size is inherited with the genes.
Mr. Huxley, can you help out Mr. Kieran on that?
It's inherited, but it's a good deal more complicated than the blue versus brown.
Yes.
Also, it's much more easily modified by diet and environment.
Yes, so that perhaps is the important point. The diet and environment might produce tall children, Miss Mother.
It's a matter of blue genes, that's what it comes down to.
Oh, come. Have you been mulling that over in that lovely little head of yours all evening?
Just thought of it.
Well, the point is that this possibility is perfectly reasonable that the short parents would have a very tall son. On the other hand, they might have a short one, too, or they might have a daughter. Or they might try and just not have anything at all. You can't tell. Now, here we have a question from Mr. Paul for the ex-role of Payette Idaho. Get to out up there on this if you can. I want you to name the character in fiction and literature, a character who seeks to plant evidence of guilt for his crime upon the following people. The character who seeks to plant evidence of guilt upon a weaver. Upon a weaver. Who is that? Any idea? Mr. Adams?
Is the weaver Bottom?
No. That throws you out of the game, then. All right. There's another weaver, not quite as well known as Bottom. In Silas Marner by George Eliot, the character William Dane tries to plant the guilt of stealing the guilt on Silas Marner. Remember that? Who is a weaver and a miser? Well, now, name the character who seeks to plant evidence of guilt upon two grooms. Two grooms, Mr. Kieran.
Mr. Macbeth.
Yeah. No, I beg your pardon. That's not quite right.
Well, his wife did.
Yeah.
Lady
well, we should make a distinction, I think. Lady Macbeth goes back after Macbeth says...
Smears the faces of the posset drug grooms.
Ah, well, you really know it, Mr. Kieran. I take it all back. It was just a little slip. Yes, Lady Macbeth does the smearing of the faces of the grooms, but the actual murder is done by Mac himself. Now the character who seeks to plant evidence of guilt upon a village drunk. Upon a village drunk. A drunk, in our language, Mr. Huxley, what do you call them over there?
Drunks.
Yeah, drunk. Yeah. How about that? Don't know, gentlemen?
Rip Van Winkle.
No, wrong, Mr. Adams. I'm awfully sorry. It's Injun Joe and Tom Sawyer who kills young Dr. Robinson in the graveyard, and then he puts the bloody knife into Muff Potter's hand. Remember that? Does it come back to you at all? Well, I think it should. Mr. Kieran, it does come back to... Well, that's good. 1 out of 2. That's enough. That sends us on to a question from Mrs. Milton Sen of Philadelphia. Name a specific ingredient which is responsible for the difference between these substances. Raisins and grapes. What makes the difference, Mr. Huxley?
Oh, there's more sugar in the raisins.
I think not necessarily. I don't think that's what makes the distinctive difference, Mr. Adams.
A raisin is a grape that is dried.
So what ingredient, or the lack of what ingredient, makes the difference?
Water.
Yes, I think water is a simple and correct answer. How about the difference between bread and toast? What's the ingredient that makes the difference, Mr. Kieran?
Heat.
No, the ingredient. Heat is certainly the condition. Yes, Mr. Huxley.
Water.
Some water is removed, but what more important change takes place when bread is converted into toast? Mr. Kieran?
Well, you have carbon formed there.
Yes, you do have a little burning, but what I was thinking of was that the starch is changed to dextrin. When I say what I was thinking, I mean I can read that off this card that I have here. It says the starch is changed to dextrin. I think we have to call that wrong. Now, how about cider and vinegar? What's the difference? What ingredient's responsible for the difference, Mr. Huxley?
Well, acetic acid versus alcohol.
Yes, acetic acid in vinegar is the thing that's added. I don't know if there's alcohol in cider in all of its forms, is there? I say that hopefully.
Yes, in all forms.
In all
if it really deserves the name of cider.
Ah, well, I guess some that I've drunk doesn't deserve the name of cider. Here's one from Mrs. L.C. Upshaw of Laurel, Mississippi. Can you give the first and last words of a line of poetry? No, I'll give you the first and last words, and you give me the whole line. Get 2 out of 3 on this. Here's the first word, O, and the last word is in now. What's the whole line of poetry? Mr. Huxley. Miss Strother.
A wilderness were paradise enow.
Yes, very good, from the Rubaiyat. Here's the first word, when. The last word, spent. What's the line? Mr. Adams.
When I consider how my light is spent.
Very good, Mr. Adams. And what's the line from?
On Milton's blindness.
Yes, very Milton.
On his blindness.
Yes, very good, Mr. Adams. That's not an easy line to remember. And here, in this case, the first and last words are the same. The first is roll, and the last word is roll. Mr. Kieran?
Roll on, thou dark and deep blue ocean, roll.
How does it go from there on? Remember?
Time writes no wrinkles on thine azure brow. That's part of it?
That's part of it, yes.
Part of it.
10,000 fleets sweep over the in vain from Childe Harold by Byron. I guess that's all we'll have time for. And now Mr. Cross points out that besides the government stamp on every package of Luckies, there's another sort of stamp that's most important, if quite invisible.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's the stamp of approval of independent tobacco experts. At auctions all over the South, these experts see just who buys what tobacco and the prices paid. And they show their approval of the tobacco sold American by their own overwhelming preference for Luckies. In fact, sworn records show that among independent tobacco experts, auctioneers, buyers, and warehousemen, Lucky Strike has twice as many exclusive smokers as have all the other cigarettes combined. The reason's clear. These experts know that Lucky Strike means fine tobacco, because at market after market, year after year, they see us consistently pay the price to get the milder, better-tasting leaf. For example, at auctions in Franklin, Tennessee, season of 1939, we paid 24% above the average market price published by the United States Department of Agriculture. At Conway, South Carolina, 35% more, and so on. And that crop, properly aged, mellowed, and blended with other fine crops, is in the Luckies you buy today. No wonder that with independent experts, with men who know tobacco best, it's Luckies 2-to-1. Smokers, since you know that in a cigarette it's the tobacco that counts, isn't the stamp of the tobacco expert's approval definitely worth acting on?
Thank you, Mr. Cross. This evening, Lucky Strike has paid out two $50 defense bonds and 2 sets of the Britannica. Thank you, Miss Strother and Mr. Huxley, for lending your talents to Lucky Strike's party tonight. Now, next week, we'll have Mr. Kieran, Mr. Levant, Mr. Adams, and as our guest, the impeccable Adolphe Monjou, whose most recent screen vehicle you'll know to be Roxy Hart. Remember, for every question answered correctly, the sender gets $10 in defense stamps, and for every question that stumps our board, you get a total of a $50 defense bond, plus the complete 24-volume set of the Encyclopedia Britannica. Send your letters with questions and the correct answers to Information Please at 480 Lexington Avenue, New York City.
And that's the way it was the week ending April 18th, 1942. My name is Henry Chopp, your host. Come back again next week when we will spotlight the week ending April 25th, 1942. And we are going to listen to Freedom's People, Vox Pop, the mobile gas news off of radio station WBBM in Chicago. Can you top this, and what are we fighting for? Some great radio entertainment as we move through World War II for 2 hours every Saturday, week by week, until the war is won. Until then, let's turn off this old tube radio. That's our time machine. Good night. God bless.
This changing world, this changing scene, where is it taking us? What does it mean? As long as we're certain of each other, we know we don't have to be afraid. These changing times we rise above. We have no time for them. We have our love, and love is the only thing that still remains the same through all this changing world.
as determined by your Hit Parade survey, which checks the bestsellers in sheet music and phonograph records, the songs most heard on the air, and the songs most played on the automatic coin machines. An accurate, authentic tabulation of America's taste in popular music. Your Hit Parade.
I'm Henry Chap with a pocketful of nickels for the Hit Parade jukebox. Let's count them down. There is a lot of chart movement this week with 4 songs dropping off. The White Cliffs of Dover by Vera Lynn, which was number 10 last week and a former number 1 song. I Remember You by Jimmy Dorsey's Orchestra, which was number 9 last week. Always in My Heart by Glenn Miller's Orchestra, which was number 8 last week. And How About You by Tommy Dorsey's Orchestra, which was number 7 last week. Let's give these songs a listen.
Just you wait and see. I'll never forget the people I met, braving those angry skies. I remember well as the shadows fell, the light of hope in their eyes. And though I'm far away, I still can hear them say, thumbs up. For when the dawn comes up, there'll be bluebirds over the white cliffs of Dover. Tomorrow, just you wait and see. There'll be love and laughter and peace ever after. Tomorrow, when the world is free, the shepherd will tend his sheep, the valley will bloom again, and Jimmy will go to sleep in his own little room again. There'll be bluebirds over the white cliffs of Dover. Tomorrow, just you wait and see.
Was it in Tahiti? Were we on the Nile? Long, long ago, say an hour or so, I recall that I saw your smile. I remember you. You're the one who made my dreams come true a few kisses ago. I remember you. You're the one who said I love you too. I do, didn't you know? I remember too a distant bell and stars that fell like rain out of the blue. When my life is through and the angels ask me to recall the thrill of them all, then I shall tell them I remember you. When my life is through and the angels ask me to recall the thrill of them all, then I shall tell them I remember you. I remember you. You are always in my heart, even though you're far away. I can hear the music of the song of love I sang with you. You are always in my heart. And when skies above are gray, I remember that you care. And then and there the sun breaks through. Just before I go to sleep, there's a rendezvous I keep. And the dream I always meet helps me forget we're far apart. I don't know exactly when, dear, but I'm sure we'll meet again, dear. And my darling, till we do, you are always in my heart. back in June. How about you? I like a Gershwin tune. How about you? I love a fireside when a storm is due. I like potato chips, moonlight, and motor trips. How about you? I'm mad about good books, can't get my fill. And Franklin Roosevelt's looks give me a thrill. Holding hands in the movie show when all the lights are low may not be new, but I like it. How about you?
The first of three debut songs comes in at number 10. It's by Kay Kaiser and the orchestra with a glee club on the vocals. Here is Me and My Melinda. Our second debut song this week comes in at number 9. It's by the Andrews Sisters. It's a pretty little song. I know many of you ladies are thinking of this about your boys in the service. Here is I'll Pray for You.
I'll pray for you at the end of the day when we are far, far apart. I'll pray for you with a prayer from my heart. I'll pray for you, and each prayer that I say, darling, will come from my heart when we're very far apart. So let me see you smile before we say goodbye. For in a little while there'll be a bluer sky. So just one more kiss, and I'll promise you this: while you're away, I'll pray for you. So let me see you smile just before we say goodbye. For in a little while, in a very little while, dear, there'll be a bluer sky. So just one more little kiss, and I'll promise you this: while you're away, I'll pray for you. I promise that I'll pray for you, loving you the way that I do, my darling. While you're away, I'll always pray for you.
Last week's number 4 song drops all the way down to number 8. While the ladies are praying for their guys in the service, the guys in the service are missing you. Here's Miss You by Bing Crosby.
I miss you since you went away, dear. Miss you more than I can say, dear. Daytime, nighttime, nothing I do can make me forget that I still love you, kiss you. In my dreams I kiss you. Whispering, darling, how I miss you. Tell me, do you ever miss me as I miss you? Tell me, do you ever miss me as I
A former number one song drops from number 7 to number 6 this week. It's by Dinah Shore. Here's Blues in the Night, My Mama Done Told Me.
My mama done told me when I was in pigtails, my mama done told me, hon, a man's gonna sweet talk and give you the glad eye. But when that sweet talking's done, a man is a two-faced, a worrisome thing who'll leave you to sing the blues in the night. Now the rains have fallen here, the trains are calling, hooey. My mama done told me, hear that lonesome whistle blowing across the trestle, hooey. My mama done told me, a hooey da hooey, old pickety-clack is echoing back the blues in the night. The evening breeze will start the trees to crying, and the moon will dim its light. When you hear the blues in the night, mark my word, the mockingbird will sing the saddest kind of song. He knows things are wrong, and he's right. La, la, from Memphis to Mobile, from Memphis to St. Joe, wherever the four winds blow. I've been to some big towns, I've heard me some big talk, but there is one thing I know. A man is a two-faced, a worrisome thing who'll leave you to sing the blues in the night. La, la, my mama done told me there's blues in the night.
Looky, looky, it's a two-set by Dinah Shore. This song is debuting at number 6. Here is Skylark.
Skylark, have you anything to say to me? Won't you tell me where my love can be? Is there a meadow in the mist where someone's waiting to be kissed? Skylark, have you seen a valley green with spring where my heart can go a journey over the shadows and the rain to a blossom-covered lane? And in your lonely flight, haven't you heard the music of the night? Wonderful music, faint as a will-o'-the-wisp, crazy as a loon, sad as a gypsy's serenading the moon. Skylark, I don't know if you can find these things, but my heart is riding on your wings. So if you see them anywhere, won't you lead me there? And in your lonely flight, haven't you heard the music in the night? Wonderful music, faint as a will-o'-the-wisp, crazy as a loon, sad as a gypsy, serenading the moon. Oh, Skylark, I don't know if you can find these things, but my heart is riding on your wings. So if you see them anywhere, won't you lead me there? La-da-dee-da-dee.
Tonight we are flashing back 15 years all the way to 1927. Prohibition was the law of the land. Babe Ruth was getting ready to hit 60 home runs, a record that probably will never be broken. And Charles Lindbergh was getting ready for his flight across the Atlantic Ocean, the first one to do that, New York to Paris. And playing in the background to all these big events was one of Paul Whiteman's biggest hits with Jack Fulton on the vocal in A Little Spanish Town.
Peekabooing down, 'twas on a night like this. I whispered, be true to me, and she sighed, see. Many skies have turned to gray because we're far apart. Many moons have passed away and still she's in my heart. We made a promise and sealed it with a kiss in a little Spanish town. 'Twas on a night like this.
Coming back to the chart this week after a week off, where it was number 9, is Jimmy Dorsey and the orchestra with Bob Eberly and Helen O'Connell on the vocals and Tangerine.
Tangerine, she is all they claim, with her eyes of night and lips as bright as flame. Tangerine, when she dances by, senoritas stare and caballeros sigh, and I've seen toasts to tangerine raised in every bar across the Argentine. Yes, she has them all on the run, but her heart belongs to just one. Her heart belongs to Tangerine.
mascaraed eye and chapeau by day shade. Tangerine with her lips of flame. If the color keeps Louis Philippe's to blame. And I've seen clothes on Tangerine where the label says from Macy's mezzanine. Yes, she's got the guys in a whirl, but she's only fooling one girl. She's only fooling Tangerine.
Moving up one place from number 5 to number 4 this week is Glenn Miller and the orchestra with Ray Eberly and the Modernaires on the vocals and Moonlight Cocktail.
Couple of jiggers of moonlight and add a star, pour in the blue of a June night and one guitar. Mix in a couple of dreamers and there you are. Lovers hail the moonlight cocktail. Now add a couple of flowers, a drop of dew. Stir for a couple of hours till dreams come true. As to the number of kisses, it's up to you. Moonlight cocktails need a few. Cool it in the summer breeze. Serve it in the starlight underneath the trees. You'll discover tricks like these are sure to make your moonlight cocktail please. Follow the simple directions and they will bring life of another complexion where you'll be king. You will awake in the morning and start to sing. Moonlight cocktails are the thing. Follow the simple directions and they will bring life of another complexion where you'll be king. You will awake in the morning and start to sing. Moonlight cocktails are the thing.
The Benny Goodman Orchestra with Peggy Lee singing is moving up from number 6 to number 3 this week. Here is Somebody Else's Taking My Place. Well, last week's number 1 song drops 1 place to number 2. Yes, boys and girls, this week we have a brand new number 1 song. Here is Bing Crosby with Woody Herman's band, Deep in the Heart of Texas.
The stars at night are big and bright,
deep in the heart of Texas. The prairie sky is wide and high, deep in the heart of Texas. The sage in bloom is like perfume, deep in the heart of Texas. Reminds me of the one I love, deep in the heart of Texas. Stars at night are big and bright, deep in the heart of Texas. The prairie sky is wide and high, deep in the heart of Texas. The sage in bloom is like perfume, deep in the heart of Texas. Reminds me of the one I love, deep in the heart of Texas. Oh, deep in the heart of Texas.
And our brand new #1 song finally pushes up to that spot after a few weeks at #2. Here is the Harry James Orchestra with beautiful Helen Forrest on the vocals and I Don't Want to Walk Without You.
Within my lonely room, 'cause I don't want to walk without you, baby. Walk without my arm about you, baby. I thought the day left me behind, I'd take a stroll and get you right off my mind, but now I find that I don't want to walk without the sunshine. You have to or you'll break my heart for me. 'Cause I don't wanna walk without you, no
And that closes out a very unusual Your Hit Parade jukebox for the week ending April 18th, 1942. Not one song stayed in the same place from the week before. My name is Henry Chop. So long for a while.
So long for a while.
That's all the song